Good to have you back. Well, our first guest is ready and waiting. As I told you, he is Professor Chris Nwaokobia, who is the convener, Country First Movement, a leadership and mentorship instructor and lawyer on the prospects of finding national healing in 2024. Good morning, Chris. Good to see you again, and compliments of the season to you.
Same to you, Steve. Compliments of the season.
Thank you indeed. Chris, let's review the year. It's been an important year for Nigerians because of the elections, because of politics, because of the things that Nigerians have had to endure and go through. But here, today is the last day of the year. Are there lessons that we have learned from all that happened? And what will you, in your opinion, have Nigerians drop with 2023, and what should they carry into 2024, which is less than 24 hours, from now?
Steve, once again, good morning. Compliments of the season. Adesua, profound greetings to you.
Morning.
Let me say clearly that the year 2023 may pass for those who want to be proactive and frontal as annus horribilis, permit my choice of words, for three reasons. The first is the fact that it was an election year, and there was a movement, there was a momentum, and there was a challenge for a new republic and a new tendency. There was a challenge for a new day and a new deal. There was a challenge for a new republic and a new tendency in governance. However, we're where we are. And so that for a lot of people, particularly the young cadre of the society, our young people, scores the year poorly for them because the candidate they stood behind did not win. Number two, and did not win advisedly, because I'm marking my choice of words. Number two, the cost of living. I'm talking with particular reference to the inflationary trend, which has gone up to 27, 28%. The cost of getting by has become astronomically invidious to the well-being of the Nigerian people. And I say this advisedly, Steve, that as we look at the lives of Nigerians, I was driving to your studio this morning, and you could see the few faces you would see on the streets were practically, it didn't look like 31st of December, practically melancholic, straight-faced, and before now, precisely, say about 6-7 years ago, you would see people who are happy to have seen the last day of the year, and you know what I mean. But as we talk, people are practically saying, okay, we're there, let's hope 2024 gets better. And then thirdly, which is very important, Nigerians are more divided than ever. The political kaleidoscope is struck on several dichotomies, ethnic dichotomies, religious dichotomies, psychosocial dichotomies, class divides, and our nation needs more than ever before. And that's why I think that those who captured to this topic are more of clairvoyants than just program designers. They've been able to capture the fact that having come this far, what we must look into is what 2024 brings. And interestingly, Steve, if we were to look at numerology, the number 20 and the number 24 gives a glimmer of great hope. But there is a place for human responsibility in all of this. And that's why I think that the time has come for those who govern and those who are governed to be true to whatever they say. Leadership cannot always tell Nigerians that we have to sacrifice, we have to put ourselves up with our bootstraps when consistently they appear unwilling to do so. I saw a video a few days ago where the convoy of Mr. President was going through Lagos Island. And it was about close to 50 cars on the convoy. And I looked at the video. I didn't see Nigerian-made cars on that convoy. And I asked myself, how do you on the one hand say you want to grow the economy, and on the other hand, everything you do is about importing produce and products? And I think that the time has come for us to practice what we preach. We must, like Martin Luther King Jr. once said, be true to what we say on paper. And that's how I open, Steve.
Thank you, sir. I think it's very important, like you said, that this year was an election year, and that this election could be argued to have been a divisive election. And you just spoke about Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his convoy. But I also want to ask, do you think in moving forward to next year, in the healing that we require for the upcoming year, that we also need to come to terms with the results of the elections? I know that even on your Twitter, for example, your pinned tweet is still a tweet calling for the disqualification of our president. So do you think Nigerians as a whole need to come to terms with the results of the 2023 elections and accept Bola Ahmed Tinubu as our president in order to move forward in our healing process?
Clearly, Adesua, it's obvious that we have a president. Whatever our sentiments and our emotions are, we have a president. The courts have said so. And so what we must do, like you noted, is in healing, be true to whatever we say. In healing, be consistent with the values for a nation that works. In healing, look in the face of those who govern, and particularly to Mr. President, and say to him, you must be true to whatever you have told the Nigerian people. And let me say this, you do not, and the best way to heal regarding the matters of February 25th, the elections, is to come publicly, come to the Nigerian people and say, whatever happened during the elections, we are sorry. Whatever sentiments and tendencies that appear to have deepened the ethnic divides and the religious divides, we're sorry. We're one nation, we must move on. And show that in every step that government takes. You know, sometimes we are often too immured from the reality by court jesters and sycophants who are around us, that we forget that people are not deaf, dumb, and blind, that we forget that people are watching. And I said in one of my interviews lately that this is apparently going to be the most criticized government in our historicity, particularly because of the way the elections went and the aftermaths. Up until now, Adesua, nobody has come to say sorry to those who were bruised and brutalized during the elections. Nobody has come to say we will push for proactive and profound electoral reforms. Nobody has come to say to Nigerians, you know, I don't even know where the new DG of the National Orientation Agency is and what he's saying about all that. We must unite our people along the lines of national nation building and healing. And the way to go is to borrow a leaf from what the late Umar Yar'Adua did when he ascended power in 2007. He was bold enough to say that I admit that the election that brought me to power was largely flawed, but I will do everything possible to ensure that future elections become transparent and consistent with the demands of the people. Everyone consistently continues under the present watch to tell us that they won the election fair and square, when the truth is before the Nigerian people. You know, I think that, and that's exactly why that great quote of Sir Walter Scott comes handy for me. He said, oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Oftentimes, we overlook these fundamental realities and think that life will go on as normal. And I do not subscribe to that mundane and banal tendency. I think that the time has come for us to look ourselves in the faces and call a spade by its name. 2023 elections was flawed. Largely, most of the matters ended up in the courts of law because the people did not believe that they lost squarely. And those who won do not even believe or think that they won squarely. And then fundamentally, to grow our nation and to heal, there are certain basic principles. We must admit our errors, work together as a people to correct the wrongs, and then soldier on as a nation to make tomorrow better. And I think that's the basic thing, the fundamental thing that this government should and must do. Because for God's sake, the election is gone and it's up until 2027. But Nigeria must go on. And that's why I keep telling people that first, my loyalty is to country first. And I think that the masses of our people need to be taken care of by government, and government must be true to what it says on paper.
All right, Chris, I like the fact that you made reference to the National Orientation Agency, which is an agency under the Ministry of Information. Information is now Information and National Orientation. The gentleman who heads that agency is a brilliant journalist, Larry Issa Onilu. We haven't heard much from him, and you are correct that where is he, or where is the agency in all of this? My first question to you on that is, what sort of intervention do you think that Nigerians should expect, or ideally should deserve from an agency, a sensitive agency like that? What sort of agenda will you want to set for the National Orientation Agency? But more importantly, what role do you see the citizens play as we move to 2024 with the heart of trying to heal? What role do you think the citizens should play as a formidable movement for opposition, holding government accountable, holding people in power, to account? And I'm not talking of just the executive. I'm not talking about just President Bola Ahmed Tinubu or his deputy. I'm talking about the fact that lawmakers are, spread all over the place from all the other parties, including Labour Party. All of them, when cars are to be distributed, they collect. When constituency allowances are to be shared, they collect. When allowance this and that are to be, shared, they collect. What should be the role of the citizen in, playing the role of the formidable opposition, especially on lawmakers and other elected officials who are not necessarily governors or president?
Steve, very profound questions. Let me start with the first, the agenda for the new DG of the National Orientation Agency. Steve, after a very cantankerous, cacophonous, and if you like, an election that split us along our fault lines, what the National Orientation Agency must begin to do, and should be doing, is to call on Nigerians. There is this, interestingly, our national anthem speaks to these issues. It says, "Arise, O compatriots, when Nigeria calls, obey." It's talking about patriotism and nationhood. He should be telling Nigerians that, yes, we agree that certain mistakes may have been made in 2023, a la the elections. But what holds us together as a people is greater and bigger and deeper than that which divides us. He should be able to tell Nigerians from the Gen Z generation, particularly those in secondary schools and the universities, if you like, that this country has come through several years of trouble, but it has been able to surmount these disparate tendencies and the invigils that trouble us to build and sustain a democracy for almost 24 years. It should be able to tell Nigerians that we must rise up as one people and heal together, believing that if we give our best, we can have a nation that works. It should be able to galvanize, mobilize, and organize tendencies, the civil society organizations, the community-based organizations. It should be able to go around and put on the lights that unite and try effectively to put out the lights that divide. And then regarding citizen participation, I think I almost completely agree with you that there is a role for the citizens of this country. And the first thing we must do is to put down the fire of ethnicity and religion and begin to look at governance and leadership frontally. We must begin to say to Mr. President, when you were the governor of Lagos State between 1999 and 2007, you told us that you were an avid believer in restructuring. What has happened to it? Because as it were, Steve, if we do not restructure this country, our efforts at making Nigeria work will be like the wait for Godot. Our efforts at making things work in this country will be very distant, and I say this advisedly. We have a federal government that is involved in the supplies of newspapers to the Federal Government College in Ijaniki. We have a federal government that is involved in supplies of computers to the Federal Government College in my hometown of Ibuzo. We have a federal government that is involved in supplies of medicaments and medicines to a medical facility in Karunamuda. A meddlesome, interloping, and unwieldy government cannot do much. I think that the time has come for Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to return to the values he taught us between 1999 and 2007. We must be true to what we say on paper. And then fundamentally, the civil society organizations and those who should criticize and ensure that government is responsible and responsive to the people must come alive. I say this, Steve, that opposition is the greatest form of patriotism. If you oppose a sitting government, it doesn't mean that you hate that government. It means that you truly believe that our country can work, and you truly believe that that government can do better. And I think that those who love our president should learn from the words of Niccolo Machiavelli in the book The Prince. He admonished the prince to understand that when sycophants say you're doing well, they obviously are asking for what is in it for them. The prince must listen to those who are saying to him, things must be done rightly. And we are saying to this government that things haven't been done rightly. Steve, I'll give you a practical instance. One of the ways to make government responsible and responsive to the people is primarily to cut the cost of governance. This government came into power and has raised to astronomical and benumbing levels, to befuddling and overwhelming levels, the cost of governance. We have the highest number of ministers since 1999, and we have a government that is consistently putting out money for things that will not immediately impact the people, for things that will not immediately rejig our economy, for things that will not immediately affect the Nigerian hoi polloi. And I think that the time has come for us to say to this government, you must go back to the drawing table. You must go back and put on your thinking cap, because there's so much to be done. And I believe that in 2024, what government must do is to lead by examples. If you're saying that the people must tighten their seatbelts, then you must show your proclivity and willingness to do so. If you're saying that people must cope and understand that building an economy is not a tea party, and that working a country that's been in trouble is not done a la carte, then you must show a willingness to lead the people, because it was Mitt Romney, when he was running for president, who said that leadership shows the way. When people say, oh, the people must rise, the people must rise. But fundamentally, we have leaders at different levels and different strata of society. We have the homes, we have the schools, and we have governments. We must tax leadership at all strata and all level of leadership of society to lead by examples. And this government must chiefly show to Nigerians that is interested in making the necessary sacrifice. And Steve, lastly, you said something that is very important. But I said to you, leadership at the political level are in cahoots, be they representatives of the Labour Party, be they representatives of the PDP or the APC, the ruling party. They are in cahoots, they are united in something that bothers me, because you didn't mention, at some point it was about 160 million worth of SUVs, of cars for the lawmakers. And some came with very benign defenses. Some said, oh, the roads are bad. Some said, oh, they can't do otherwise, everybody's collecting. Some said it was a contract. And I asked myself, do we not have automobile makers in Nigeria? With the dollar beating the naira silly, what should we do and what must we do? Is it not to encourage local enterprise? What is wrong if these lawmakers and if the presidency had ordered locally made SUVs? What is wrong for a nation that must tow a new course for recovery to do what is proper, right, and right? You know, so I think that the challenge on leadership, indiscriminate of political parties, indiscriminate of tendencies that border along the contours of partisanship, is to ask leadership to be responsible and responsive, to ask leadership to think of how they must help in growing the economy, and to ask leadership to think country first.
Thank you, sir. You know, just yesterday, the National Assembly passed a budget. I like that you mentioned the cars that our lawmakers accepted. Within that budget, the presidency has requested 6 billion naira for the purchase of new cars for the State House headquarters, another 100 million naira for purchase of cars for the State House liaison office in Lagos. Even the Chief of Staff's office has requested over 200 million naira for the purchase of new automobiles. So do you feel that our National Assembly are representing us when it comes to checking the budget? Because, you know, they've now passed a budget that's even higher than the amount that the executive arm of government originally requested. And I also want to ask you, because you have mentioned that we should put on the lights on what unites us. I want to ask, what can you highlight any things that stood out to you about the unity of our nation that celebrated the multifaceted identity of a Nigeria, our multi-ethnic and our multi-religious backgrounds? Like, what are the highlights of this year for you that you feel that we should take forward into 2024?
Let me say very importantly that regarding the National Assembly and the budget, we lampooned the Ninth Assembly under our former President Muhammadu Buhari as largely a rubber stamp, as largely a yes, sir, National Assembly. But the National Assembly led by Senator Godswill Obot Akpabio is worse than it is. It's worse than the last one. And I say this without fear of querulous critics. All they have shown is a willingness and a commitment to pander to the tendencies, the capricious proclivities of their executive. That's all they've done. All they've done is to say, we're here, bring in the bills, bring on your financial demands, and we'll approve it. And unfortunately, we expected that at some point we will have some members of the National Assembly who are from the opposing parties rise up to say, if for anything, I want to be noted to have said no to this. I want to be noted to have opposed this. The voices of disagreement, the voices of discontent have been largely silenced at the National Assembly. And then you don't say to a people that you want to grow an economy when consistently, you know, I think that rather funny is the fact that they'll tell you about student loans of about 5 billion when they're repairing the edifice of the vice president with about 15 billion, when they're buying cars for billions, when they are budgeting for several things that do not immediately impact on the economy. And so you worry, how committed are the members? Like I said, it appears that the leadership is in cahoots, indiscriminate of political parties to impoverish the Nigerian people. And I think that the time has come for the civil society and the masses of our people to rise up and call leadership to order. Then regarding the second leg of your question, which is very important to me, what about 2023 inspires patriotism? What about 2023 inspires hope in the Nigerian project? And I'll tell you about three fundamental things. The obedient movement, and this is indiscriminate of political loyalty. Across Nigeria, we had people from Karu Namuda, from Kafanchan, from Ibuza, from Benin, from Lagos, across the country, who rose up to ask for a new day, a new deal, and a new republic, which obviously shows that the generation next, and those they call the Gen Z, are largely interested in a nation that works, more than a nation that is divided along ethnic and religious lines. That is fundamental, and I think that the NOA must take note of that. And then Mr. President and his team must understand the fact that this generation of Nigerians rose up does not mean that they don't like him. It means that they want a country that works. And so we must tap into the energy of that movement. That's one. Number two, the fact that after the election, Nigerians wanted the judiciary to sit up and do right. And then whatever happened, happened. And still Nigerians didn't go to the streets to burn and broke down or resort to lawlessness. That means that Nigerians have faith that this country can get better. And that means that a large percentage of Nigerians think that if Mr. President wakes up to the urgency of now, Nigeria, even under him, can still get better. So there's a challenge on the presidency to look at the disparate tendencies, look at the various tendencies across our country, and look at how we can pull this energy together, the energy that believes that Nigeria can truly get better. And then thirdly, which is very important, is that despite the humongous, the befuddling, benumbing, and troubling inflationary trend, not minding the fact that you go out to the filling stations and with 5,000 you can't get up to 10 liters of fuel. Not minding how difficult it has become, Nigerians have not resorted to villainy, brigandage, and banditry, shows that there is a never say die spirit in the average Nigerian that government must tap into. But let me say, as I close that, my response to that question, that what we cannot and should not take away from the Nigerian people is that Nigerians expect leadership to attend to them more than about their overwhelming personal interests. Because when you look at the budget and you look at the appropriations, you ask yourself, there are about 460 members of the National Assembly, both the lower house and the senior and the upper house. Across all divides, you don't have a political leadership that is over 10,000, and we're talking about a country of about 200 million people. And then when you check the budget that directly impacts 10,000 Nigerians, you cry and you weep. So I think that the time has come for us to ask leadership, and people must rise up to ask frontal and far-reaching questions.
All right.
If this is a democracy, which like, permit me, Steve, let me just put this in. If this is a democracy like the former and famous American president said, Abraham Lincoln, it must be interested about how government and governance affects the people, whether it's of the people and by the people. And the time has come for those who pretend over this enterprise to attend to these fundamental issues.
All right, Chris, let me put in the last question to you with a view to getting your specific views, thoughts on, and very briefly too, on this important thing. Two, a couple of areas are where the new government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has made impact in Nigeria. First will be the economic side of it, the removal of subsidy and the floating of the naira, both which, the jury is still out as to how it's affecting the pocket of an average Nigerian. The other part will be the fact that the president has been very mobile, traveling all over the places to seek investors to come invest in Nigeria. But then if you look at the latest report from the MBS, which clearly shows that the foreign capital inflow declined to $654 million in Q3 of this year, the lowest in 10 years. A lot of people might wonder, to say, are we going to ever get commensurate positive result from all the travels of the president? Add to that mix the largest ever cabinet, and of course the largest budget ever at 27 trillion that the president presented, but jacked up to 28 trillion by the lawmakers. Those are the things that have defined Asiwaju presidency in 7 months. To you specifically, Chris, would you point at anything at all in 7 months that the president has done correctly? And if you find one, I hope you're able to find one, what sort of 2024 would you like him to shape for Nigerians? Very briefly, please.
Steve, I want to say very importantly that your question is more of an ambush. Would I find anything in 7 months that shows that our president is pro-people and proactive? I'd say clearly that he has shown in some fora that, the reason I decided to remove subsidy is to ensure that the Nigerian people's money works for them. But how well have they done that, and how well have they carried the people along? Then, Steve, our president has been traveling across the world and around the world, telling people about how ready Nigeria is for business. But fundamentally, and this is my advice to Mr. President, they may not be telling him exactly how it is. The Nigerian people are looking at questions of legitimacy. Then number two, the Nigerian people are calling for a nation that is secure. Look at what happened when people should be preparing for a new year in a festive mood. It's almost the same old story, the same story we had in 8 years under Muhammad Buhari. People were mowed down. We had human barbecues in Taraba and Plateau State. So I think he has to raise the bar regarding issues of security. And then fundamentally, floating the naira and calling for the removal of subsidy. The first thing you do is look at how this impacts leadership vis-a-vis the people. And fundamentally, it does look like, government removes subsidy to further enrich the rich, because when you look at the budget and you look at the pre-budgetary spendings, it's all about money for the Aso Rock, money for Mr. President and the Vice President's office, money for the office of the Chief of Staff, rather than about how to jack up and fast-track the recovery of the Nigerian, the economy. And I think that the fundamental questions, as Mr. President closes up his holiday and prepares to return to Abuja to continue the task of governance in 2024, I think that I would set before him, and this is humbly my opinion, 4 fundamental issues. Effectively work on security. Do the best you can to ensure that you cut the cost of governance. 3, lead by example. And 4, when your nation is troubled, step out and show leadership. I expected that by now our dear president would have been in Plateau State. He's the chief, the commander-in-chief. He commands the armed forces, he commands the police. I expected that by now, after the horrendous human barbecues that were thrown up in the Plateau and in Taraba, that he will step out to say, countrymen, I've cut short my holiday because I feel your pain. Leadership must rise up to the challenge and lead by example. And then fundamentally, Steve, I am an avid optimist. I believe that this country can get better. I believe that it's about the challenge of leadership as well as followership. I think that the elections have come and gone, and I think that the time has come for the Nigerian people to rise up, to throw away the tendencies and proclivities for a Milocon or your turn, my turn, or ethnic diversities and the likes, and rise up to that place where we understand that when there's hunger, it is indiscriminate of your Yoruba-ness, Hausa-ness, Igbo-ness, Ibibio-ness, and the likes. And I also think that the time has come for leadership to understand that when a country is this checkered and troubled, the leadership must lead by examples. So I believe that the challenge of Mr. President and his team is to be true to what they say on paper and fundamentally look at restructuring and giving control of resources to the various regions of this country. Look at the tendencies for true fiscal federalism and look at how we make ownership the basis of leadership. Because, you know, my late dad told me that everybody's property is nobody's property. We must ensure that people control their resources, contribute to the center, and make Nigeria great again. I am truly convinced that if we do that, our country will be great again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us today. I hope you enjoy your New Year's Eve and celebrate your celebration into the next year.